What's going on, everybody? I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. For those of you that are new to the channel, my name is Ty, and today in this video, we're going to be talking about Kung Fu Panda 4, a movie that has been on my own radar for a while now. I've been very excited for this movie because I am an enjoyer of the Kung Fu Panda franchise. I've got my Post sweatshirt on here today, and I am ready to talk about this movie because honestly, I think I enjoyed it more than most people from what I've been seeing online. So, last night, I went to go check out this movie with my girlfriend, who's a huge Kung Fu Panda fan, and I was able to finally get my hands on the Dune popcorn bucket. Check it out in all its glory. I'm not really a popcorn bucket collector. I think they're honestly a waste of money, but that's the one exception where I was like, this is a classic. It's gonna be really cool in like a decade from now, whatever. But regardless, going into this movie, I honestly had tempered expectations because, you know, it's inevitable. You're gonna see early reviews, and the reviews I was seeing were pretty much just saying that it's either bad or just like mid. I didn't really see any reviews saying this movie was good. For some context, I've seen Kung Fu Panda 1, absolutely love it. Kung Fu Panda 2, absolutely love it. Kung Fu Panda 3, though, that was a hard miss for me. I really do not like that movie. I don't know what it is. I think I honestly dislike it more than other people. I didn't really like the whole dad storyline. I feel like it was a little bit boring, and I didn't really love Kai as a villain. So going into this one, I had tempered expectations. I, was expecting like a decent movie, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I loved this movie. I didn't think it was amazing, 10 out of 10, but I thought it was a great addition to the franchise. I mean, seriously, I thought it was better than even just good. I thought it was great. Where do I start? The first thing I want to mention is that the first three Kung Fu Panda movies were made on budgets of 135 million to 150 million. So obviously, huge budgets for these animated films, especially since, they were years ago. With inflation, that's probably even more now. Kung Fu Panda 4 was made on an $85 million budget. And the thing is, in the trailers, you could see that the animation sort of looked worse, and honestly, that scared me. But on the big screen, I could not tell that the animation looked worse at all. I thought it looked absolutely great. Moving on, of course, we've got Jack Black coming back as Po, and listen, he is not washed or uninterested or getting old in the slightest. He is just as funny, as charming as he was in that first film, and obviously the sequels following it. And I've got to say, just overall, the voice cast in here, it just feels like everything's elevated. Every single little character, I hear a voice and I'm like, wait, I recognize that's Ronnie Chang. I recognize that's Bryan Cranston. I recognize, that's Ke Huy Quan, who's also in this movie, and he's been on such a hot streak. This might be the funniest Kung Fu Panda movie, I'm gonna be honest with you. I know it's a kid's movie, but there's a lot of adult jokes in here. There's one drunk driving joke that had me absolutely dying. Like, I'm telling you, there are funny jokes, and it's not just from like Po being stupid. I mean, like, the actual dialogue is funny, which makes, for some good gags and stuff. Moving on to some of the other details here. The action in this movie. There are some of the best action set pieces that we've gotten in any of the films, and I really do mean that. And that's why I kind of have a hard time understanding some of the hate. And listen, I understand that some of the negativity, and I'll get to the negatives in a second, might have just came from the fact that, first of all, the Furious 5 isn't in this movie. They really aren't. They're literally non-existent. They explain why they're not in the movie. However, I just want to say this. I feel like the best way for franchises to keep going is to evolve. And I feel like what this movie does differently is that it removes the Furious 5, which, were a pretty important part of the original trilogy, but they add in Zhen, played by Awkwafina, and I understand people don't like Awkwafina, but I'll get to that in a second. And it's more of a buddy cop dynamic with Po and Zhen, the little fox, and I really enjoyed that. I think that it was a nice change up. We needed a fresh breath of air. How many times are we going to see Po and the Furious 5 fight a main villain? We need a change of pace. Also, Po's, two dads are also kind of thrown in the mix here. They're actually an integral part of the story as well. So it's like they're kind of also his supporting cast. And it's like, I don't want to say we have a new Furious 5, but, he does have a new team around him. So I don't get those complaints. Let's have a nice change up. Maybe they'll return for the next movie if they make a Kung Fu Panda 5, but I don't see the complaint there. I think it's nice to have a switch up. On top of that, the artistic direction here also feels a little bit different, and that might have been because of like budgetary constraints or whatever, but it feels like there's some stop motion in here. There's some almost like watercolor painting type of sequences. There's some like shadow fight scenes. It's hard to explain, but when you watch this movie, also there's some stuff that looks like comic book panels. It was a nice change of pace, a nice fresh breath of air. That's what I'm trying to say. This movie feels slightly different from the original 3 while still maintaining its core. But I think that's what this franchise needed. You don't want to just keep going like the Fast and Furious movies and every movie's the same and just getting stupider and stupider. I think that this was actually a good movie about Poe trying to find his predecessor for, the next Dragon Warrior. Moving on from there, Zhen, played by Awkwafina. I get it. People don't really like Awkwafina, and honestly, I'm kind of in that boat with you guys. I think that Awkwafina isn't the best person in the world when it comes to, having a great time with her on screen. However, the character she's playing here is a pretty laid-back, normal character. It's not like she's trying to be all wacky and goofy and silly, whatever. You hear her voice, yeah, but I think she's a great character. She has a great arc. Poe has a great arc in this. There is a lot of emotion in here as well that I feel like makes this a worthy sequel. Again, oh no, the Furious 5 isn't in here. Shifu isn't in here the whole movie. But I think it was a nice change. It was a nice decision to have a break from them so that we miss them more. They say distance makes the heart grow fonder. Maybe they'll return for the next movie. I think that would be a great decision. But I like the buddy cop dynamic in here. And that's what makes this pretty much the funniest Kung Fu Panda movie as well. On top of that, speaking of change of pace, I kind of just keep rolling here. We're in a new city. We're not just in like the Valley of Peace or whatever. A new setting. We get to see a new world. Trying to just expand this world building, which I really appreciate. And also, how can I not talk about, of course, Viola Davis playing the Chameleon and the return of some of our older villains. Listen, they don't get the most screen time, they don't get the most to say, but it's really cool to see our old villains come back. And the Chameleon is super menacing, super powerful. I don't know, just overall that final kind of fight sequence with her I thought was definitely justified as being a great battle. And it was, I know I keep saying this word, but worthy of being, a part of this franchise. I really am going to sit here and say, just doubling down, that I'm a defender of Kung Fu Panda 4. And I don't have any bias. I didn't even grow up with the Kung Fu Panda movies. I honestly watched them pretty much for the first time like a year or a year and a half ago. So again, I don't even have nostalgia. I just genuinely think this is one of the more enjoyable movies that I've seen in a minute. And again, it's not as good as the other films, the first and the second film, but I think it's easily better than the third film in my opinion, and I do think it's a good time at the movies, and I think you should go check it out. Considering how much they cut their budget down, I would sit here and say, good job guys, I'd say bravo, give us a Kung Fu Panda 5 on the same budget. I would love to see just another sort of episode to this franchise, if you know what I mean. It's not like this movie necessarily had the biggest stakes or had the largest, overarching story ever. Like, yeah, of course there's stakes, but it's not like the first or second movie where it's super emotional. This movie was just almost filler in a way, but I don't mind that because it also progressed Poe's arc. So for Poe it wasn't filler, but outside of that it feels a little bit filler. But I had a great time seeing these characters back on the big screen. This is a worthy sequel. Again, I'm doubling down. I really, really enjoyed this movie. 4 out of 5 stars. For the most part, I've been seeing people give this movie like 3 stars or 2.5 stars or even worse. I think that it's a great, worthy follow-up. I know I keep saying the word worthy. That's the only word I can think of right now because that's just honestly how I'm feeling. I had so much fun with this movie. Honestly, again, there's so many great gags, so many great little side characters thrown in here that I really enjoyed that are, get a laugh out of you, you have a good time with, and yeah, great arcs, great emotion, great story. That's going to be my review for today. So guys, thank you so much for joining me on this review. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.